Hi everyone, Vincent is back, and of course I'm here to share my story about my journey out of the Watchtower Society and how I became a follower of Christ. And I am always excited to share my journey with as many people as possible. And yes, I am finally back. I know it's been a while since I made a video, at least a couple of weeks now. And as I said before, just remember, if I don't put out a video, too soon, then it's because I just can't do it at the time. My job has changed. I've been working more overtime, but it's not just that. It's when you make a video, you need to have quality video time. And when you have a family, your family's here, you spend time with your family. And in order for me to make a video, it needs to be completely quiet. And I have to know that there's not going to be any interruptions when I produce a video, because these videos are not edited, and the last thing I want to do is have to redo a video, and usually the first one is not the same, or the second one's not the same as the first one, and so I want to avoid all of that. But I am back, and just remember, if I haven't put out a video for a long time, it doesn't mean I've abandoned the channel, doesn't mean I want to end this story at all. No, as I said, I'm always excited when I start talking about these things. And when it comes to a person's testimony, like perhaps you have a testimony, I have a testimony, I like to talk about these things because I get excited. I mean, it encourages me, because sometimes we get depressed. Sometimes we get weighed down with our own sins, and we feel that perhaps God has abandoned us. That happens to all followers of Christ from time to time. But when I reflect on my journey, on my testimony, it just reassures me every time. And it fills me up with appreciation for God, and I become, I get completely renewed when I start thinking about what God has done for me. So I am not abandoning the channel at all. I want to continue on sharing my story. Well, what are we going to talk about today? Well, today is not going to be a good day. All that time I've been talking about God and how wonderful God is, and I talk about, how I felt about God in the Watchtower and how I felt about God after the Watchtower, all of these good things. Well, Vincent was not always thinking good things, and we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to talk about Vincent's plunge into spiritual darkness, and I just want to give a warning. There's a lot of people that respect me because I did leave the Watchtower, and there are people that respect me because I have not left God, and they respect me because they like the way I just feel free to express myself about God. But even people I know, people close to me, they have not heard this side of the story. And when they hear, just the things that I'm about to say, they're going to think, oh man, what was wrong with that guy? I mean, they may even completely change their view of me. I mean, who knows? Because, yeah, I started doing things that I normally would never do. Because if you remember, and I've said this many times already, I know I hate to keep repeating myself, but I do have to, because some people may not have watched other videos. But at some point, I put God on a shelf. And remember, I wasn't going to take God down unless it felt organic. It had to feel real. I was no longer going to push the issue as far as, wanting to serve God. I wasn't going to make it happen anymore because I was down and out right now. I was depressed. I have been searching for God, and I just didn't know what to do at this point. So that's when I put God on the shelf. But the one thing, though, that I was very conscious of, and this is what people need to know, is that I was conscious of the fact that I would never speak bad about God, never speak bad about Jesus, never, speak bad about the Bible at all. Why? Because I knew that Vincent could be very wrong. I knew it had to be organic. Like I said, and, I didn't know what was going to happen in the future. So I left it at that. And at that point, I just continued to follow my heart. And I'll be honest with you, when I came to that conclusion, it felt so good. It was a huge relief for me to let go of everything and to finally just figure myself out, find out who I was, what interests me, and all of that. And I've mentioned this before as well. A lot of people, when they leave the organization, they're trying to figure out who they are. And like me, and they've done exactly what I'm about to talk to you about, and that is they look back at what they wanted to do as a child. They look at all of the interests they may have had in the organization that they could not pursue, and they start doing those things, and they think that that is their identity. And that is exactly what happened here. You know, I started reflecting back on childhood, not just things that I couldn't do, but I remember even as a witness child, I'm talking 5, 6 years old, there were certain times of the year, take like Halloween, when I wasn't envious of the people that were trick-or-treating, but I liked the feeling it gave me because I liked creepy things. I mean, a lot of kids do, just because, you know, it's mysterious, it's you feel safe doing these things, you know, because in your mind, none of it's real. So it was just a fun time for a lot of kids. And so I started thinking about those times, the way I felt when I was a child. And like many witnesses, I started celebrating the holidays. And one of those holidays was Halloween. And, you know, when I first started celebrating Halloween, I even told my brother, I was on the phone with him, and I said, you know, I don't know what it is about Halloween, but it just gives me this warm and fuzzy feeling inside. And that was so true. You know, I'm going to share some things with you and some of my thoughts that I had during this time. And some people may wonder, why are you spending, you know, time talking in detail about some of these things? But it's because I want to show you just how much I enjoyed this stuff. I mean, I loved horror. That's what happened to me. I mean, I lived for horror all the time. In fact, every day I would download new short stories, you know, from Spotify. I would download podcasts that deal with actual events. I mean, just the facts, like information connected with Robert the Doll. That's a good example. There's a history behind it, and it's at a museum and all of that. Regardless of how you feel about it, whether you feel it's real or not, the story is real. The way that doll was treated was real. And that's the way, that was the stuff that I would listen to at work all day long. I'd be listening to horror. And when I first started celebrating Halloween, the other thing about it is I was not going to celebrate it as an immature kid. I didn't get dressed up in costumes. I didn't view it as a fun time. I viewed it more as a serious time. To me, during this time, Halloween became a time to reflect on the dark, deep mysteries on what is out there. Because I always believed there was more to us. Even if I wasn't a witness, I would believe that there's more out there than just us. It just seems reasonable. So that was a time when I would reflect on many things, but at the same time, I would enjoy doing certain things that I enjoyed, like those podcasts, listening to those things at work. I'd listen to them when I went to bed. I started watching, I watched every horror film imaginable out there, and you know, and after a while, you know, you've watched all of the good horror films, and so what do you do after that? Well, you start reading horror stories, and so I always was purchasing and downloading horror novels. I was downloading dark history in connection with Spiritism, and I was reading this. I mean, this stuff brought me joy. Can you believe it? I mean, I was so happy. You know, I'd come home from work, and now instead of enjoying, you know, or not enjoying, but instead of stressing out, going to the internet, trying to figure out the Bible and, you know, what is true and all of this, it felt good to come home. And oftentimes my wife, she would work in the evenings. I'd be there alone. So I would just light some candles and start reading my latest horror novel or whatever else I wanted to read. I was really into this. I mean, I loved it. You know, when Halloween came, I would, you know, carve out jack-o'-lanterns. Like I said, I didn't want it to be like a childish time. I didn't decorate my yard with all of this, you know, phony Halloween stuff. I would carve out a couple classic jack-o'-lanterns, and I'd place them under a dead tree with leaves and stuff, so it would look kind of creepy. And that's the kind of stuff I did. I took it more serious than what some do. And so this became my way of life. I mean, I woke up thinking of horror. I went to bed thinking of horror. I absolutely loved it. In fact, if you look at my the little thumbnail, you notice the thumbnail is very different today. It's not my face, which is actually a good thing. But you'll see, if you can see that thumbnail, you can see that's my cat, and it's laying on my desk. And that desk is, I had this in a big room. It was once our master bedroom, but we moved our master bedroom, and so I had this entire room, and this room became my sanctuary to think about the dark things in life. And so you'll notice that my cat, its head is on a book of mine, and that is a horror short story book based around Halloween. And then right next to that book, you'll notice that I have my tarot cards there. And tarot cards were very important to me. I really wanted to learn about these things. I was taking daily readings of things. There was so much to learn about it. So I was learning tarot. Every day I would take daily readings. I'd take weekly readings. I was learning, all of these things. I mean, I was really into tarot cards, major. The other thing too, I was into was like when I first, decided I was going to go this route, the first thing that came to mind, remember I'm connecting this all to childhood, I would think back to all the old horror films that were out like in the late 70s, early 80s. And, if a person liked horror, I mean, at that time period, when I was doing all these things, I knew cheesy horror from good horror, so to speak. And even the movies that were considered cheesy horror, I enjoyed the posters, the horror posters, because they captured my childhood. Because oftentimes, and I even had a book about this, how the posters and the book covers from this time period were actually scarier than the movie itself. And I liked that idea, and so I would collect as much of that kind of stuff as possible too. I would order this stuff from specialty shops, these types of posters. I even had a frame. I ordered. It had the Exorcist, picture there, and on that it had individual pieces of the actual film of The Exorcist, different scenes, and I would have that as well. I would order a lot of vintage things, looking things. They were prints, but I liked vintage Halloween things. There was posters that I would purchase. It would show old Halloween dances, witches dances, and things like that. I liked that old creepy style, so I'd order things like that. Now, something else that I ordered too, and it came every month or every month or every few weeks, I ordered a complete collection of haunted houses and haunted building. I mean, these were detailed models. You'd put a light inside, and they were creepy looking. And these were all from urban legends. I mean, these were mental hospitals. They were old houses in various places that were known for hauntings and sightings like that. And so I just loved that kind of stuff at this time. And so I collect the whole thing. And it cost me about $1,000 for all of for that collection. And then I even went beyond that. I found out that they even had older ones from years ago that they had released. And so I was looking for those too. I was about ready to order these from like Etsy and Craigslist and different places like that here in America. So, I mean, that is how much I was into these things. I was so much into this that eventually I moved out. I got remarried, and I had there was this little room in our apartment, and I set that up like a museum. I mean, I had all of these shelves. I displayed all the houses, and each house came with a paper. It looked like a vintage old paper that explained the story behind that building. I would set that all up, and then I would also purchase like specialty prints from artists that you might have a stencil drawing, and it would be based on that house. For example, I had like the original Amityville horror house. I'd set that up, and then behind that I would have a picture of the stencil drawing of the Amityville Horror House, and they might have like teardrops of blood coming from the windows, stuff like that. I would order. I ordered, like I said, a lot of vintage things. I would display this stuff. I would display the posters. Just a lot of creepy things. Now, I did not want to be a Satanist like a teenager would. I took this time very seriously, and I never wanted to glorify Satan directly. I mean, of course, I was glorifying Satan by doing all this stuff anyway, but I didn't want to do it directly. You would never find the word Satan anywhere in my house. I didn't like using that, although I say that, but at the same time, I liked reading horror that was about Satan, and I would listen to music, satanic music, and we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. But I did not, when it came to music and things, I did not want to listen to music that glorified Lucifer or Satan directly. And there were music groups that I did listen to, and they had some songs like that. They had anthems to Lucifer and all this stuff. I mean, it was pretty creepy stuff. I mean, it wasn't just, some commercial rock band producing all this stuff. No, these people were really into it themselves. It was one of the most satanic groups you can listen to today. So I was listening to this stuff as well. And so I can't overemphasize just how much I loved this time of year. Every day was Halloween to me. I mean, I lived this stuff. Like I said, my wife would leave and I would just dive into my horror, big time. And once I set up this room, this sanctuary, as I called it, with my little museum, I always kept the door shut. My wife never wanted to go in there. I know why now, of course. She never wanted to go in there. I mean, that stuff just spooked her out. But, I acted the same way. It didn't really change me at that point at all. I was just interested in these kinds of things. And I just kept getting deeper and deeper into this. Well, that room, like I said, my wife was scared to go in there. It was always cold. It was always freezing. It didn't matter what time of year it was. And when you put that stuff up, when you display it, you give it energy, you give it a feeling. And I felt that energy when I went in there. And I would go in there at night and I would sit down on the floor. I might light a candle or two, and I would meditate about dark stuff, about the dark mysteries, as I would call it. And I would burn these candles in these like tea light holders. And that's another thing I was into. And I still believe this today. I believe certain things that objects have energy, and they absorb the energy from the people that had them and from their surroundings. And so what I would do at this time, I would even go to antique stores. I'd be looking for vintage, actual like candle holders and stuff like that, because I wanted to feel the energy of these past lives. And so I would bring that stuff home. And yes, I totally believe that today, that everything is energy and we are affected by that energy. In fact, I was reading from a magazine not too long ago, but that's why when you go into an antique store, almost everyone feels this heaviness. There's a certain feeling that comes with being in an antique store, and it's because you're absorbing all the energy from people's past lives. And I totally believe that today. It all has to do with metaphysics and all of that. And that's another subject I really enjoy today. And I, believe it or not, has a lot to do with my spiritual awakening. And, I'll touch on that later. But I was big time into horror. And I mean, it was my comfort zone. It was like my comfort food. I didn't think there would be anything that would take me away from what I loved most. And that was my horror. And when the weather was bad, rainy, windy, even better. I absolutely loved that time of year. Well, at this time, as I said, remember this group I was talking about, this satanic group that I was listening to. I'm not going to give the name of the group. You may figure it out yourself, but very satanic. I mean, like, for real. I mean, they are 33rd degree Masons, and there are songs on there that are basically about Masonry, and the normal person would not understand. But if you understand some concepts of Masonry, you will know exactly what that song is about. You'll know that it's a ritual going on, and it's a satanic ritual. And Masonry, learning about Freemasonry and all of that was also part of my spiritual awakening. And again, we'll have a lot to say about that later. But in the meantime, I understood what these songs were about, and I liked the way they made me feel. But what was that feeling? That feeling is it's an empty, depressing feeling, but it's like a drug. It's like you can't stop listening to it. Well, I got so deep in my mind in these things, I started to listen to this song from this group, and I would listen to it, off and on. But then later, it just really affected me. I began to really enjoy the song. It was the music's creepy, the atmosphere of the song is creepy, and one day I realized, what's this guy singing about? It is about the Antichrist. It is about the Antichrist being conceived at night in this creepy place. And that's what the song is about. And once I realized what the song was about, I actually listened to it more. I mean, I kept listening to this and listening to it. And it really began to affect my mind. Like I said, the feelings these songs give you, they give you a feeling of hopelessness, depression, emptiness, all those types of things. And yes, those are bad feelings, but at the time, I mean, you kind of liked that feeling. I mean, if you were weird like I was at this time, you liked those feelings because it added to the mystery of it all. Why is it making you feel this way? I mean, this music has some kind of power that you don't understand. And so I would listen to this and listen to it, but what effect did it have on me? Like this particular song and the other songs I was listening to? Well, I enjoy writing. I enjoy, a lot of the writing I do is not fiction. I like to just write about anything. But I always wanted to be a writer as far as even fiction. So I started writing a book. And I actually even, I did this all on my Google Drive. I made even a cover to the book, and it was very creepy. I had an overlay of an old image of Satan, an angel. It's really a dark picture, and I had that. You could see that, and there was this old house and trees behind it, and I had that, overlaid with that, and I called the book The Remnant. And again, why am I talking about all these details? Some people would say, why are you talking? Why do you have to tell us everything? Because it's to emphasize, once again, not only did I enjoy it, but I was starting to get deep into this stuff. So I wrote this book, or started writing a book. It was called The Remnant. And what it was based on my real life experience and my brother's experience when we lived in this old green house. But I embellished the story when I started writing this. And what was it about? This is when it gets really weird. And this is when people will think, what the heck is this guy doing? The book was about how this priest, it's always a priest, right? In horror, it has to be a priest. He apostatizes from the Catholic Church, and he thought he could become the devil's friend. And what happens to him one day is, because we know it's not possible to really be Satan's friend, no matter how bad you are. That's a lie. Well, in the story, the beginning of the story, this priest is screaming in a field, and he is running because he is being chased by this flaming ball of fire, and you kind of see a face in there, and it is speaking, and it sounds like a woman, and this is Satan. In my story, it was Satan, and Satan was pursuing him to the side of this house. And I'm thinking of my house when I was growing up, and that is where Satan slaughtered him, on the side of the house. And then all the plants died, the tree died, and then after that, no one went there unless they had to, and no one took care of it. It was going to be about a family that moves into this house and how their dad was this fanatic person, wanted everything perfect and green and all of that, but never went to that side of the house. And then all through time, it was called The Remnant because the longer this family stayed in there, their behaviors started changing and becoming weird and all of that. And that was, I mean, I was really writing this. And when I was writing it, I felt like a different person. I really did. I felt different inside. I was enjoying this story. And that is so not me today. I mean, I look back at those times now, you know, and there's only one good feeling I have. And I just remember, and that was the feeling that when I first started doing this, I felt free. I felt that relief, like I said, because I no longer had to do these searches like I was. But other than that, that idea of going back to that time period, it just can't happen again. It's very depressing and it's very empty. You only feel happy, when you're actually doing the whatever you're doing, you know, watching the movie, reading the book, writing the book. But in the meantime, life is, you know, it's meaningless. There's nothing to think about. And that's why all I thought about was horror, because it's what made me happy, or at least I thought it was making me happy at this time. So that is what was happening in my life. I had put God on a shelf and I pursued Satanism in this way. So after that, some things happened. Like I said, I got married again and I continued this way of thinking. But during this time period, it was by the time I was starting to celebrate, I think it was my second Halloween, and the elders finally came to the house, and they had been around my house. They had seen the jack-o'-lanterns, and this is when my disassociation happened. This happened right before I got married again, and it was before I had that bedroom all set up like my museum. It happened in between there that I disassociated myself from the Watchtower Society. So that's what I'm going to talk about next. My next video is probably going to be very brief because I just want to talk about that incident that happened there, how I disassociated myself, what the elders said to me, what I said to them, and how I felt during that time period. So we're going to end the video here as far as like, this is where my life was going at this time. We'll talk about the other next video, and then after that I will continue that story about my life pursuing these dark things and what happened. You know, how do you go from that to God, like almost instantly? And no, it didn't happen instantly, but when Christ did find me, it was like it happened instantly, that moment. But that's sometime down the road. But we're going to end the video here. But before you watch that video, promise me that you will listen to the music in the link below. Now, you may not listen to the music. Maybe you don't want to listen to the song, but watch that video and read the lyrics to that song. That song is very important to me. It was very important in my disassociation from the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society Corporation. And I will remind people in the next video, make sure you listen to that song. That song captures everything that I experienced in the Watchtower Society. So I hope to have you join me in the next video. And just remember, I'm no longer like that. I don't celebrate Halloween. I don't get involved with anything satanic right now. So keep that in mind. I am not that bad person anymore. Christ has saved me. Well, anyway, until the next video, we'll see you.